The next question deals with a question that's commonly asked, and this was sent in by a parishioner, so I'll go ahead and answer it on video. Let me read the question out. Would God take into account that a person may have been misled by teachings but wants to be good in his eyes? In other words, if you want to please the Lord and go to heaven but learn the wrong teachings, will God take that into account and allow you to be saved? Underlying this question, and again, it's a common one, but underlying this question is the assumption that there is this thing called invincible ignorance with regard to God. Invincible ignorance is ignorance that you cannot overcome. Most people use it when thinking of the person who lives beyond the scope of the proclamation of the church. They've just never heard about Jesus. They don't know about God or his law, and so they naturally just kind of follow the teachings they've been raised with, or the religion in which they've been nurtured. And so the question with regard to that person is usually, well, look, they couldn't know about Jesus, so how could they be judged for not following Jesus? They can't know the truth about God, so how can they be judged for not following the truth about God? All they have is this false religion. So wouldn't God then be just in giving that person mercy for following the teachings in which he or she has been nurtured? Again, a very good, very common question. I want to answer it by turning to Romans chapter 1, and if you have your Bible with you, it would be good for you to follow along, because it's an interesting passage and one that really comes into play when we're talking about this question of invincible ignorance and whether or not it really exists. So Paul begins there in chapter 1, verse 18. I'll read it. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Now, that's an important line, because it tells us that, and Paul's talking about all humanity here, that men and women, so it's not that people do not know truth, it's that people suppress the truth they know. There's a moral component to our ignorance, is what Paul's saying. Let me keep going, and you'll see how he fills this out. For what can be known about God is plain to them. Everybody knows what can be known about God. It's plain to us. Now, how can that be? Well, verse 20, for his, God's, invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived. That's also an important line. It's not just that God has clearly revealed himself in the things that he's made in the natural world. It is also that all men and all women have clearly perceived what he has revealed. We get it. We know it. Ever since the creation of the world, that tells us it was known, and then it still is known in the things that have been made in the natural world. We know God because of what he has revealed in the natural world. We all know him. We all get what he has told us about himself. And so verse 20 concludes with this very scary sentence, so they, men and women, are without excuse. This tells us no one will be able to plead ignorance before God. God will say, you did know, and you tell me you don't know, you're lying. I revealed it to you, you perceived it, you got it. Paul here is telling us there's no such thing as a real, honest-to-goodness atheist. An atheist is someone who's persuaded himself, or he's taken the truth that he knows about God, he's suppressed it, and he's used his mind to help that process of suppression. He knows the truth. Now, in verse 21, Paul goes on to talk to us about the emergence of human religion. Because we have suppressed the truth about God, and we do not like or want to acknowledge him, we have in his place set ourselves or other things. But let me just read how it goes. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. So Paul is saying here, all human religion is the result of this exchange. We take what God has revealed, we twist it because it's not compatible with what we want it to be, and we create our own religious expressions that reflect more clearly what we would like. I want God to be this way, so there he is. All human religion is an outflow of this process of suppressing the truth about God and twisting it so that God becomes shaped more to our liking. We recreate him in the image of mortal man ourselves, or of the images resembling the things of this world, birds, animals, and creeping things. That's the human condition. There is no such thing as invincible ignorance. We have all been given the truth about God. We all suppress it. And even more than that, if you turn forward in Romans to chapter 2 and begin reading in verse 12, we're told that beyond this revelation of himself in nature, God has also revealed what he requires in our hearts. So you wonder, well, how do people know what is right and what is wrong when they don't have the Bible? They've never heard the Ten Commandments. Well, Paul answers that question in chapter 2 of Romans. All who have sinned, this is beginning in verse 12 again, all who have sinned without the law will also perish without the law, and all who have sinned under the law will be judged by the law. For it is not the hearers of the law who are righteous before God, but the doers of the law. And here by law, we're talking about the written law, not the, well, we'll see, the written law, the scriptures. For when Gentiles, who do not have the law, the written law, do by nature what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they don't have the law. Now, how could the Gentiles do what the law requires without knowing what the law tells them to do? Well, verse 15, they show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, right? So they have this innate sense of right and wrong given to them by God, and their conscience is what draws them to this innate inscription of the law of God on their hearts. Everybody has a sense of what is truly right and what is truly wrong given to them by the Lord himself. While their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them. So if their conscience tells them when they violated this law written in their hearts, and their conscience tells them when they haven't. So you might think, well, okay, so God has now revealed himself in nature, but the problem is, of course, men suppress that truth. God reveals his will in the human heart. Well, is it possible? I mean, Paul seems to hold out the possibility that it's possible for a Gentile to follow this conscience, that he's this law written in his heart, by use of his conscience and be justified. And, to that we would have to say yes. I mean, if a person, anybody in the world, were to follow the law, either the law that he has by virtue of the inscribed work of God in his heart, or the revealed law of Scripture, if someone can follow those laws, then absolutely he will be saved. I mean, God's a just God, and he's going to judge everyone in accordance with their works, and the righteous person will be justified. But we've already seen in chapter 1 that everybody already suppresses the truth about God. So that gives us a hint that the righteousness of following the law will also be something that is not possible. And that turns out to be true, because Romans 2 is followed by Romans 3, where Paul writes this. We have already, this is beginning in verse 9, we have already charged that everybody, both Jews, those are people who have the written law, who God has revealed himself to, and Greeks. Those are people, that's a word probably here, Paul by that word means not just Greeks as a nationality or an ethnicity, but all Gentiles. Jews and Greeks, all are under sin. And as it is written, here he strings together some verdicts that God has given to us in the Psalms. No one is righteous. No one understands. No one seeks God. All have turned aside, and together they've become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. And it just goes on and on. And the point of this is, again, that No one is invincibly ignorant of who God is. No one has been left without a witness of what God requires in our hearts or in the written law. And everyone rejects both of those revelations by an act of the will, because we all by nature hate God. Now, what that tells us is that we are all guilty. We are all condemned. We are all under sin. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, Matt, because I know people who, where I've heard of people at least, who live in remote places, or people who have not really heard the gospel, who really seem to be seeking God. How is that possible if, in fact, no one seeks God? And I would say that is possible, but it's not possible by virtue of natural human desire. Again, Paul's already told us, by nature we don't seek God. By nature we suppress the truth. We know the truth, we hate it, we don't want it to be true, and that's because we want to be God ourselves. So what does that mean? Well, it means that anyone who really is seeking God because God has already sought him, sought her. Jesus says, no one can come to me unless the Father draws him. God works in the human heart to turn it from a heart of stone, which is what we all have, and we all work on hardening most of our lives, turns hearts of stone to hearts of flesh. He does that by a supernatural work. It's an act of grace, an unmerited gift of favor. And when that happens, yes, the person then, with a softened heart, begins to seek God. Now, when that happens in a place like the United States, then the gospel is readily at hand, and God will bring someone to that person who will be able to share the truth about Jesus to him, and he will receive it and be justified by virtue of what Jesus has done on his behalf in his life, death, and resurrection. But what about those guys out there who are living in remote places beyond the scope of the gospel? What about them? Well, Jesus has a very good promise that we can apply in those cases. He says, those who seek, what? They find. Everyone who seeks finds. Now, of course, people who are seeking are those God has already begun to work in. So let's take the guy who lives way out beyond the realm of what we call civilization. What happens to him? If he truly does, if God has already worked in his heart that he's going to find some way to bring to that person the truth. He's not going to save that person through the animist or polytheistic or whatever kind of religious expression he already has at his disposal. No, he who seeks finds. He finds the truth. What that means is God will either bring a missionary along his way to give him the gospel, or God can directly reveal himself in Jesus Christ to people. Remember what happened to Paul on the road to Damascus when he was going to arrest Christians. Jesus just showed up and declared the gospel to him and gave him an appointment to be his apostle. So that could happen too. But whatever the case, it will be that the person who was once lost and in the darkness because of his own sin and suppression of the truth will, by the work of God, be brought to the point where he is truly seeking, and all who truly seek truly find Jesus. They find Jesus, no one else and nothing else. So I hope this has answered the question. There is no such thing as the guy out there with invincible ignorance. Everyone knows the truth. Everyone suppresses the truth. God alone has the power to overcome that suppression and bring people to faith in Jesus Christ. And when he wants to save someone, that's what he does. He doesn't save someone by just granting them mercy for living in the wrong place. That's not how he works. So I hope this has helped to answer that question. And if you have a follow-up or some other aspect of the question you'd like to add to it, please feel free to do so. Thank you.